phone we have former St. Louis Cardinal, San Francisco Giant. He also broadcast for the New York Yankees. He was president of the National League. Bill White. How you doing, Bill?
I'm doing great.
You left out the Philadelphia Phillies.
Well, that's all right. That's where I got hurt, but I did play there, and I like the city so much that I still live right outside the city.
So are you a Phillies fan, or are you a Giants fan, Yankees fan, Cardinals fan, or just a fan of baseball?
Well, I'm retired, and I really don't follow baseball that much. Most of my guys obviously are retired. I spend some time with some of the older guys. In fact, the guys that got me out. I see Bob Gibson every once in a while. I see Sandy Koufax every once in a while. We see Jim Cotton. We see we just see people who are our age and who we played against for the most part.
Okay. Now, I grew up in St. Louis, and I can remember Harry Carey broadcasting, and coming to the plate was William Dakova White. and I've never, before or since, heard a middle name. Where did the name Dakova come from?
I don't know. I asked my aunt once who named me, and she said it's in the Bible someplace. Decouvogh. I shortened it to Dekova because I have a hard time spelling the other one. But she told me that, and that was years ago. I've never found it in the Bible.
Okay.
Because Harry, when he was broadcasting in Chicago, used to take the players' names and try to spell them backwards or pronounce them. I don't know if you ever tried that with Dakova.
No, I would not. I won't even spell it the way she said she spelled it. I shortened it up quite a bit.
Now, you came up to baseball at a time after Jackie Robinson had broken the color barrier in '47, and so you were like the next half generation, but it was almost as if you were among the pioneers of African Americans in Major League Baseball. Is that fair to say?
Well, you could say that. I think that the Robinson's era, when they got players from the Negro Leagues, they were a little bit older. They were in their 30s. And I think I got there about 6 years later or so. And I think Frank Robinson was there, Vada Pinson. Willie had come in I think 1954. I came in 1956. So that's probably a good. That's probably right that we were the middle group. Yes, right after Jackie.
But it wasn't significantly easier for you than it was for, say, Jackie Robinson or Larry Doby or any of that initial group who integrated the big leagues.
No, I think it was easier. It wasn't easy, but it was easier than Jackie, for instance, who the Dodgers did not accept him until they found out they needed him to win a pennant. And I'm sure that spring training he couldn't go to. They had to go over to Cuba. And Larry, of course, I'm closer to him because I was raised in Warren, Ohio, and probably the first Major League game I saw was in Cleveland. As a patrol boy, I very young went up there, and I kidded Larry all the time because I remember he got hit on the head, a fly ball in the left center field, and he went over and called for it, and Dale Mitchell tried to call him off, and the ball hit Doby in his head, and I kidded Larry. Larry's one of my favorite people, but he and Jackie and the earlier black players, including some who were brought up just to say we have a black player, they went through hell. And by the time Frank Robinson, myself, and Vada and other players about our age got there, we were at least were accepted as members of the team.
But the players who, like Jackie, like Larry, had been in the Negro Leagues, they didn't have to go through that minor league experience that you and hundreds of others did, especially down in the Deep South. Not that it was a whole lot better elsewhere geographically, but you sort of knew when you went down to the Deep South it wasn't going to be easy.
I didn't know that. I was born in Florida, but we went north at the age of 3, Steel Mills Town, Warren, Ohio, and I went to integrated schools. We had integrated playgrounds for the most part, except blacks couldn't swim even in Ohio, only on Mondays, and then they cleaned out the pool, but you didn't have that overt segregation and discrimination. So when I went down to Danville my first year, I was the only black player in the league. I didn't realize what I'd gotten into, and it was tough. But I took a different slant. I looked at those people who were yelling these things as animals, uneducated animals, and I just took it out on the baseball, and had a decent year down there. And the other thing I'll say is that not at any time during that year, and this was 1953, I was just out of college, or after spending my first year in college, not one player, and I was the only black player in the league, but not one white player ever said anything derogatory to me.
Were the hotels segregated when you came up, like they were when Jackie, and certain restaurants you couldn't eat at, or that eased up when you came into the league?
Are you talking major leagues or minor leagues?
In the major leagues.
No, there were some places that, as I remember, we couldn't play. Couldn't stay. I think there was a hotel in Philadelphia. There was a hotel in Cincinnati. There was a hotel in Chicago, and obviously St. Louis. And even I remember as a youngster, just got out of high school, we played an exhibition game in San Francisco, and also in L.A., and we couldn't stay at the hotels there. And this was 1953, so it was fairly widespread.
Do you think the generation that followed you of African American players had a true appreciation of what you and the previous Negro League players went through?
No, and I don't think they should. Things had changed. I remember once at Yankee Stadium, I was sitting around with a former player in the Negro Leagues who was taking care of the Yankee uniforms, and I was listening to him tell how they would play 3 or 4 games a day, how they would have the old dirty uniforms, and how they had to find a place to eat. And as I was talking to him, Willie Randolph came by, Chris Chambliss came by, there are a lot of the older players with the Yankees and came by, and we're listening to them. And they certainly didn't realize what this older fellow had gone through. See, it was Chambliss, it was Winfield, Randolph, and one other black player on the Yankees back then, and they really didn't realize that. They were astounded that had happened to players.
You had a famous incident with the crowd where the fans we call them fans, were booing you, and you had a little gesture for the fans?
Well, they weren't booing me. They were calling me everything I could think of. I sort of, sometimes I would smile. I didn't let them get under my skin, so I gave them the finger. And after the ball game, of course, there was a group, I think maybe 500 or 600 out there, and we all got bats, and we walked into our bus and took off, and then they started throwing stones at me. The amazing thing is that I think that the Southern players on the team I played with in Danville, Virginia, back in 1953, were more sympathetic and more supportive than some of the Northern players on that team.
Why was that?
I don't know. I really don't know. But in fact, at every team I played for, I think the Southern ball players were a little bit more aware and helpful. I think that maybe the Northern players just didn't want to get involved in it, and it might have surprised them too. But I remember Ray Murray when I played in the Texas League. Ray Murray had caught for the Cleveland Indians, and he was from Tennessee, big old Tennessee boy. I was having problems in Fort Worth with the kids of all, 3 kids about 14 years old. And, of course, I was about 20 then, or so 21, somewhere around there. And I remember Ray coming over, and he called everybody neighbor. He says, "Neighbor, you want me to go over there and shut those kids up?" I said, "Nope. I'll shut him up with a home run," and I hit a home run.
Now, as I recall you during your playing career, you exhibited very little emotion on the playing field. Was there a point where the guy who flipped off the fans in the Carolina League changed?
Oh, no. No. I couldn't fight 2,000 or 3,000 people. And I said, well, there's no sense antagonizing them. I'll just antagonize them with my bat. And I remember we played in another little town down there, Winston-Salem, I think it was. And another surprise, here's a guy sitting in this wooden stadium, but sitting in a box seat, shirt and tie, probably one of the leaders of the community. And he's all over me, called me all kind of names. And I just turned around and looked at him. And then when I got to the plate, I hit a home run. And that's the way you deal with things like that. I had no fear of anybody. It's crazy. I didn't have any fear of what was going on down there. And so that was why I was fairly successful there, and that's why I've been fairly successful all my life, because you can't intimidate me.
Now, when you made it to the big leagues, were you resigned to the fact that it would be a segregated existence off the field, or did you think it would be more integrated?
Well, I thought it would be more integrated because here there's a lot of money being made by professional baseball teams and by hotels and by restaurants and whatever. And as I mentioned, some of the cities we had a problem, probably half the cities, but we got through it. I was fortunate enough to be a teammate of Willie Mays, and he helped me quite a bit, not only off the field but on the field by making me aware of what certain pitchers threw and how to play different hitters, and a lot of things that Willie helped me with. He's really sort of a father to me at baseball.
What made you decide that you wanted to write a book?
Well, after I left, I was not happy because of the way I left. I thought I had been used by a few people to take over baseball. First of all, I had a problem with after Bart Giamatti died, I had a problem with the next commissioner, and I had told my executive council that I had a 4-year contract, and this is within the first year Bart died, and I said, I'm not getting along with this guy, and two things. Number one, when my 4 years are up, I'm leaving, or if you could find somebody prior to that, I would leave. And they said, well, hang around, we'll see what happens. And what happened was that, unfortunately, I couldn't get along with that commissioner. No, in fact, probably ownership, I'm not sure they got along either. And for one of the few times in baseball, he was asked to resign.
Were you the National League president when Pete Rose got banned from baseball?
Yes.
Were you part of that decision process, or was it all Faye Vincent?
Well, that was Bart Giamatti was still there, I think. And it was Bart Giamatti, and Bobby Brown and I sat in on the meetings. But Bart is the one who made that decision. And obviously, he's a commissioner, you go along with it.
Did you agree with that decision?
Yes, I agreed with it. What I disagreed with was we had a meeting out in Arizona, and I felt that it would be best to in a sense, not suspend Pete, but tell Pete to take a little rest and go out and get a great lawyer and defend yourself against these charges. But it was decided to allow him to continue to manage Cincinnati, and obviously after every game, the game wasn't important. What Pete Rose thought was important, and that distracted, I think, from baseball. But Bart made that decision, and the law rules says you don't bet on baseball, and everybody who's been a part of betting on baseball has been suspended, starting with the Black Sox scandal.
Who came up with the title for your book, Uppity?
I did.
What does that mean, Uppity? Because
if you don't know what it means, and you don't know it,
I'm only 40, so I'm
okay. Usually, there was an epithet that came after that.
Oh no, I don't think so.
A lot of times, when people would say he's uppity.
Well, I've heard I've talked to a lot of people who ask me the same question. They said, well, and a lot of these people are not necessarily black. They said, well, I call my daughter uppity. So I came up with that because I was called uppity by the New York Giants general manager, whom I replaced as league president, because I had asked to be traded. When I got out of the Army, I spent 2 years in the Army. When I got out, Orlando Cepeda was the first baseman. The Giants moved to San Francisco, and Orlando had some great years, and right behind him was Willie McCovey. And I didn't see I didn't think there was an opportunity there for me to play. So I said, trade me. And obviously, back then you had the reserve clause. And a player, especially a player of color, didn't ask to be traded. So he called me up, but I got traded, and I had some good years.
Yeah, you ended up getting traded to St. Louis. And
yes.
Had interesting times there.
We beat the Cubs all the time too.
Well, who didn't?
I let Ernie and Banks and Billy and all those guys know that it was a good rivalry, Cubs and Cardinals.
We gave you Lou Brock, though.
Yeah, we appreciated that because that's the only time I was able to be in a World Series. Lou was a great player in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, we appreciate that. Johnny Keane really helped Lou become a great player. He turned him loose and reined him in when he had to, but we would not have won in 1964 had Bing Devine not traded for Lou Brock.
Now, was Johnny Keane the best manager you played for? You played for some pretty good ones.
Well, he was the best manager as far as running a game, letting players play. Once he told me I dove for a ball and I hurt my shoulder, and he sat me down next to him and says, "Look, I want you to play 162 games, and don't dive for balls anymore. Don't knock down guys at second base anymore. Try to take them out." Now, this was all new to me because the Cardinals always were hustling. You steal bases, knock a guy down, and whatever. But he was pragmatic. He said, "Look, you've got to play 162 games." And that's what I did the next year. I played 162.
You had some great teammates through your career. Willie Mays. I mean, you had Stan Musial. Bob Gibson. I mean, who was just – Bob Gibson, I think he was the best pitcher of all time, just watching this guy pitch in the highlight films.
Well, he was tough. He gave everything he had. In fact, the first time I faced him, he hit me. He was mean, too. But he didn't throw at you. He just, he brushed you back. Once in a while, he might hit you on the elbow or something.
Yeah. After you got traded to Philadelphia, you face Gibson, and what happens?
Well, as I mentioned, he hit me. He hit me because I like to go out and pull a ball, and he said he told me when I was played with him. He says, "Don't you go out there on me because I'll hit you," and he did.
I'll tell you what, him and Marichal, I don't know who was tougher.
Well, Marichal wasn't all that tough. There were some tough guys as far as throwing at people. Don Drysdale actually would throw behind you, and so there were 3 or 4 pitchers who really were headhunters. But Gibson was not a headhunter.
He would get you in the body, and you'd feel it, right?
Well, I don't think he hit that many people. I mean, if you know that you're going to get thrown at, you're going to tiptoe up there and hope that first pitch is a ball.
When we've talked to former players, former Yankees say Mickey Mantle was the best ever. Everybody else says Willie Mays, except for Monty Irvin. He said the best player ever was in the Negro Leagues, a certain player called Josh Gibson.
Well, I've heard that, and I've read that. And I can't affirm that or deny that because I didn't see him play. But he didn't get a chance to, obviously, play in the big leagues. You can only judge by what you see, and I've never seen a player who could play any better than Mays. He was a 10 at everything.
Now, you said you never loved baseball because baseball would never love you back. Have you in baseball reached a point where you like one another?
No, baseball is a business to me. Here's a kid who loved football. Back in the 46s, I'm in Cleveland. I'm in Warren, Ohio, and I'm looking at the Cleveland Browns, Marion Motley, Bill Willis, Otto Graham, and I think back then you used it as an opportunity to go to college, play football. Baseball, you didn't get scholarships. Didn't give scholarships, but we were steel mill people, and the only way we couldn't afford to pay to go to college, so we played football. Warren, Ohio, Massillon, Canton, McKinley, just some great alliance, excellent high school football, and baseball was just there. And just fortunate, I guess I had a couple of good games and signed to play baseball, but it wasn't a love of baseball. It was the fact that I could play baseball and make money. And back then it wasn't that much, but I got a little bonus. Leo Durocher gave me a bonus, and I played it. And as a result, I was able to finish 2-3 years of school, send all my kids to school, and do what I did. But it was a job, and I was fairly good at the job.
What was Durocher like?
Durocher, he was a character. He'd cuss, he would yell, and he would scream, and he really helped me become a better fielder.
So he's the one who helped you win, 8 Gold Gloves, is it?
Well, I 7, I think. I'm not sure. 6 or 7.
He helped you at first base. I don't think,
he was,
nobody could have helped you in the outfield, could they?
No, I was a terrible outfielder. but he got me as a kid. As I mentioned, Leo signed me. I went to spring training right out of college, and I couldn't catch the ball, and he would hit thousands of ground balls to me. Made me a better fielder. And I always appreciated that. They called me Leo's little Bobo because he really did a good job with me and made me a lot better fielder. Couldn't help me with hitting because he couldn't hit, but he did make me a better fielder.
How did you get into broadcasting?
Well, I got a call. I started broadcasting in St. Louis for KMOX Radio. Big, of course, everybody knows KMOX, big station, sports. Let's see, Joe Raggiola,
Jack Buck.
Bob
Hyland was the general manager.
Bob Hyland was the general manager. There were a lot of guys who came through there, and Bob offered me a job one winter to come in and learn broadcasting. Not to broadcast, but to learn, go out with the PR people, go out with the salesmen, sit in his meetings that he had once a week, and he wanted me to learn broadcasting from the bottom up. And then he also put me on the air. I worked with the engineers. He put me on the air, and I did a disc jockey show. I was the worst disc jockey, whatever. And then I would substitute for Jack Buck and Harry or somebody who was out. And that's how I got started. The first interview I did was with Yogi Berra. And when I got traded to Phillies, they gave me a television show. And I worked at Channel 6 for a while, and then the Yankees wanted a minority broadcaster, which I found out after I got up there, and Mike Burke hired me to do Yankee work, and I was there 18 years.
Now, was that interview with Yogi Berra the best one you ever had?
It's the worst one, because it was my fault. It wasn't Yogi's fault. The first interview I did for KMOX, I asked questions that the answer was yes or no. And I would ask questions. Maybe, Yogi, do you like managing? Yeah. You like being with the Yankees? Yeah. And I learned from that because I had 5 minutes of yeah and no. And Hyland and the people said, "Look, you've got to ask these people questions and so that they'll give you an answer." So that was a good experience.
But the only reason he went on was for the transistor radio, right?
Yeah, we gave away a little cheap transistor radio, and after all those yeses and nos, he says, "Where's my transistor? Where's my radio?" Yogi and I have become pretty close. He's about an hour and a half from me here. He has a great golf tournament every year. And, they're from St. Louis, Yogi and Carmen. And we got along very well. As soon as when I became a Yankee broadcaster, when I would go spring training, I'd take Yogi and Elliott out to dinner, find out what's going on down there in spring training.
And with the Yankees, you were the play-by-play guy with Phil Rizzuto, the color analyst.
Well, no, we all did 3 innings. Phil did 3, I did three, and Frank Messer, who worked for the White Sox, I believe, for a little while, he did 3.
What was Phil Rizzuto like?
Well, if you could keep him in the booth, he was okay. But he liked to do his 3 innings, and then he would like to go home, which helped me because I'd do my 3, and then I'd do his 3, and I became a little better broadcaster a little quicker. I went there in 1971. And the Yankees didn't have a good team at all, and I think that's why Phil and I sort of wanted to divert the attention from the way the Yankees played to sort of it being entertaining in the broadcast booth. And then, of course, he would leave sometimes 5th, 6th, 7th inning, and I'd do his work. And when the Yankees finally won in 1976, CBS asked me to do the broadcast. So I made use of the extra work to become a little bit better. I was a terrible broadcaster the first year.
Well, as opposed to being a ball player, your first at bat in the big leagues is a home run. You hit that one in St. Louis for the Giants.
Right.
And you figure, okay, this is pretty easy, right?
No, oh, you mean batting?
Yeah.
Oh no! Let me tell you what happened there. I was up and the count was 2-2, and a curveball pitcher threw a curveball I thought hit the outside corner. Leo Durocher, the umpire at that time, said ball 3. As I turned, I started walking toward the Cardinal dugout in St. Louis because I was playing with the Giants against the Cardinals, and Ballanfant on what I thought was strike 3, he said ball 3. So I got back in, and the pitcher threw a fastball, and I just cleared the roof in St. Louis. But it was all downhill after that because they found out I was a fastball hitter. I couldn't hit the changeup, couldn't hit the curveball. They didn't have sliders in, but I couldn't hit the ball away. I could really turn on the fastball.
Was New York covering the Yankees? Was it really the Bronx Zoo, or was it overblown?
Well, I live 60 miles from the stadium, and after every game I'd come home. I lived on the Delaware River, and I didn't become a part of what was going on in New York. I was fairly close to the players, but they had a lot of confidence in me. They'd tell me things they shouldn't tell me. I just depended on doing the game and not talking about Sparky Lyle or Thurman Munson or whatever was going on, Reggie Jackson or the catcher Munson. I just did the game, and I think that carried me because I see a lot of older guys now said, "Hey, I learned a lot of baseball while you were broadcasting." And I think that was my job, not to second guess, first guess, or whatever, but to teach the game and try to have fun doing it, hoping that the listener would have fun.
What do you think your legacy is, or what would you like it to be?
I don't have one. I don't think. I've done the things that I wanted to do. My kids are all college graduates, and that is my main legacy because I didn't finish. I promised my mother I would, but I have 5 children, and they're all college graduates. That's my legacy, and I'm not worried about sports or broadcasting or whatever. That's something I had to do to make a living and to support my family.
I'll tell you what, you're a survivor. If you worked for the Yankees for all those years for George Steinbrenner, you're doing something right.
Well, we got along. I kept my. In fact, George and I were. I called him Skipper. I never called him George or Mr. Steinbrenner. We were probably a lot closer than people think. Mainly because I think Steinbrenner liked people who would tell him no, and I would tell him no. He would send stuff up into the booth that maybe he didn't like Billy Martin, and he would want one of us to rip Martin or Lou Piniella or stick Michael. And it got to a point he would give it to the PR guys, just take this up to the booth, have him read it, but don't give it to White because he knew I wasn't going to read it.
Well, you had met George many, many years ago when you were in college playing basketball at Hiram.
Yeah, at Hiram. He was coaching Lockbourne Air Base. And of course, they had access to some of the better people who were drafted into the Army or the Air Force, and he coached Lockbourne, and I was playing for Hiram. I was just I think that was my first year, 19 years old, and dribbling down the right side past the Lockbourne bench, and this arm reaches out and tries to pull me out of bounds. And we talked about it, but I know who it was until years later. We were at Mama Leone's, Phil and I. We were entertaining some box seat holders, and as I was leaving, this big guy there grabbed me and says, "Hey, you know who I am?" I said, "No." He says, "I'm the guy who tried to pull you out of bounds." And of course, I had known he had taken over the club, I think, in 1973. But I didn't know that he had managed or he had coached Lockbourne, and he mentioned that. And I think George and I, Skipper and I, got along okay.
I'll tell you what was truly amazing is when I read part of your book about you and when Phil Rizzuto was on his deathbed, you sat by him for 30 minutes and 2 of you just held hands and you didn't say a word.
Well, I'd go see Phil. Phil's family was great. His wife, Cora, went almost every day. Yogi Berra went 2 or 3 times a week. His daughter would come down from Albany, New York, to see him every week. and I would go maybe once or twice a month. And the last time I went over, the nurse had him sitting in front of a big picture window with the sun coming in. Phil was immaculately dressed, shirt, tie, sweater, and he was sleeping. And I went over and sat next to him, and the nurse whispered that, Bill White's here, and he reached his right hand and out, and I grabbed it with my left hand, and we just sat there. No one said a word. We just sat there for about 20 minutes, and finally I got up and left.
Is it safe to say that you're still uppity?
Oh, yeah.
Always will be.
Well, I always will be the person that my mother and grandmother raised, and I think that's important. I'm trying to find here. The foreword to my book says, "To my grandmother, Tamer Young, who taught me to have pride in who I was, and to my mother, Edna Mae Young, who gave me the confidence in what I could become."
Do you think this country's made progress in the time you've been alive?
Oh, obviously. Hopefully we're not backtracking. I'm 78 years old and born in Florida to sharecroppers, and my grandmother was smart enough to get us the heck out of there. Worked in the steel mills. My uncles worked in the steel mills in Warren. They eventually married and bought their own homes with savings. And as that was in 1930s. I was born in 34, so that's around 37. Anything would be better than what it was back then, or what it was in 47 when Jackie came up, or where we are now. So, yes, there has been progress. Has it been enough? Well, who knows? Seeing our present political situation, I don't know whether we're going backwards or if we are just treading water. Hopefully, we'll move more forward than we have been.
Why you're not commissioner of baseball, I'll never know.
Well, because first of all, I wasn't. I don't think I was capable of doing that. I had enough problems with the 12 and 14 guys that I had, and no, I think the commissioner today is more of a businessman than basically what we look at as a commissioner. But baseball is making a lot of money. They're doing very well.
So as a commissioner, what's he making, 10, 12 million a year?
I think he's making 18 or 20.
Yeah. If you'd known that, you might have given it a second thought.
No. There's only so far you can go, and I'm a little bit too independent, I think, to have been able to do that job.